And welcome to the Rec Center Advisory Board meeting here on May 14th, 2024. I will now ask Ms. Kathy Myers if she could please do the roll call.
Leah Lexicos.
Here.
Carrie Boldman. Sue Doherty.
Here.
Elliot Dyer.
Here.
Rich Finneran.
Here.
Tondra Frisbee.
Here.
Blake Harris.
Here.
Jerome Johnson.
Here.
Jeremy Norrington Slay. He is replaced by Drew Meredith.
Yes.
John Orzak.
Here.
Dan Rambler.
Here.
Darlene Walk. Jason Whirling.
Here.
Thank you. And at this time, I will ask for a motion to excuse Ms. Darlene Walk and Ms. Carrie Boldman, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Thank you. Before we get in to a few things, I know as Ms. Kathy Myers mentioned, we do have a new member here representing Firelands Health. He is the Vice President of Operations, I believe, at Firelands Health, Mr. Drew Meredith. So if you could just take a moment just to formally introduce yourself.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here this evening. Drew Meredith, Vice President of Operations, Marketing, and Strategic Planning for Firelands Health. Been with the organization for 20 plus years, lifelong resident of City of Sandusky. In fact, my wife and I, about 7 years ago, bought my parents' house located in downtown Sandusky. So looking forward to this initiative. It's very important step moving our community even further forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meredith. Before we move forward, members of the committee, you have the minutes before you from our last meeting on May 9th, 2024. What is your pleasure? A motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
All right, thank you. Without objection, that motion is approved. Before we get too deep into tonight's discussions, I would like to, just share some brief thoughts. As chairman of the Recreation Advisory Board for the City of Sandusky, I want to acknowledge the importance of our duty to establish a vision for programming and amenities to recommend to the City Commission. Our board is comprised of individuals from various backgrounds, both personally and professionally, which means we may have different opinions and perspectives. Keep in mind that it is crucial to keep an open mind, listen to each other, and engage in constructive dialogue. I would also like to express my gratitude to all members for allowing me to serve in this capacity as I look forward to working with each one of you over the next several weeks as we collaborate on this important project. Lastly, I want to encourage any public comments and residents who wish to bring forth questions or concerns to do so in a respectful manner. We are all passionate about this city and this project, and while we may have different thoughts, we all want what's best. Let's come together over the next several weeks to create a shared vision for a recreation center that will benefit this community from years to come. As we move forward, I want to touch on just some of our, really just give us a brief recap as to how we got here. So back in November, we passed a levy by a very narrow margin, I believe receiving just 50.2% of the votes, which we passed, I think, by 35, to be more specific. What the levy provides is a sustainable funding source that will help fund things such as maintenance of the building, provide up-to-date equipment and amenities, staffing, and hopefully keep memberships affordable for all residents. And that is expected to generate $672,000 a year. Rewinding that a bit and going back to 2021, we reached a historic agreement with Cedar Fair That includes roughly $700,000 per year for the next 20 years for construction cost. Once again, this advisory board is tasked with creating recommendations for the city as it relates to the final design of the facility with programs and services that the facility will offer. Additionally, we want to help identify additional funding sources, such as opportunities for naming rights and donations from philanthropic foundations and other organizations. And many of us here, I believe all of us, have a packet in front of us. To the residents and others interested who may have internet access, I do want to inform you that these packets and presentations can be viewed online at cityofsandusky.com. You can click the Government tab and then click on City Publications tab. That will then drop down, and if you look six tabs down, you will then click on Planning Documents and then click on the Recreation Center Conceptual Plan. And again, you will then have access to this presentation packet. Moving on to the meeting schedule, just a reminder, everyone, our meetings will be held every Tuesday at 5, with the exception of Wednesday, May 29th, as it will be held that day due to the holiday. And public comments. We are asking that we do keep each individual to a limit of 5 minutes, please. And we may very well be looking to make a motion to set the public comment period to a total of 20 minutes, just so we can, do our work here as an advisory board. So any thoughts on the 20-minute limit? You think that's fair?
I think that's fair. I'm willing to make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. And with those motions, we will go ahead and set the public comment period to a total of 20 minutes, please. And moving on to new business. Well, actually, speaking of the public comment period, are there any residents that would like to come to the podium? Please do so at this time. And state your name and address, please.
Good evening, everyone. Eric Jordan, 1924 Harrison Street, Sandusky, Ohio. Sorry, I did this about 20 minutes when I was at work today. So, my name is Eric Jordan, Jr., a lifetime Sandusky resident, Sandusky High School and Sandusky Career Center graduate, a small business owner for the last 7 to 8 years, and a law enforcement officer. Thank you to commissioners, the planning committee, and the various organizations involved in the process, and most importantly, the residents of Sandusky. The time, effort, and the resources put into making a rec center a reality for our great city doesn't go unnoticed. This is something we needed for a long time, and it's finally coming to area. Growing up in the city, the closest thing we had to a recreation center was the area YMCA. Some of my fondest memories and greatest friendships were bonded at this facility. Growing up in the area, the YMCA was a place where a majority of student athletes would spend a lot of their time getting stronger in the weight room, working on their basketball skills, and having their first experience playing organized sports such as soccer, baseball, and basketball, as well as social development and just making some lifetime connections. I was devastated when I learned of the YMCA shutting down due to financial reasons, the building becoming out of date, and lack of programming. I knew this would be a blow to the city and the residents, especially the youth population. I will always be grateful for having the YMCA as a child into my teen years. And I believe many of the youth will feel the same way about the new rec center, as it can be a great resource for students and student athletes to develop their talents throughout their lives. One of my main reasons I want to start my business Next Level Gym to offer some resources to the general public, especially the student athletes who are lacking the space to improve their athletic ability and work for their futures in their prospective sport. Personally, I know the rec center will take away from my own business in some aspects, but I know it's for the greater good and keeping our community moving in the right direction. I hope there can be some partnerships and program offered by area coaches, trainers, area gyms, and mentors. I believe there will have to be a joint effort in the community, the Recreation Board, area organizations, and partnerships to make the recreation a success. The rec center will have to compete with Planet Fitness, area gyms, and even Cedar Point Sports Center and Sports Force. I have high hopes of making this facility up-to-date, modern, and include a wide variety of programs that will attract area residents as well as tourists who visit the area throughout the year. One thing to keep in mind is the facility's memberships and fees. It will be very important to keep it reasonable so individuals from all demographics can experience the future rec center. The only big recommendation I have for the development of the center would be to include a multi-purpose turf area in the facility. Whether it's 40 yards by 30 yards of turf area or bigger, it'll be beneficial in many ways. This open space could be used for a recreation department program, multi-sport use such as football camps, baseball and softball camps, soccer camps, cheerleading, dance, etc. This space could also be used in partnership with Sandusky High School and Sandusky Central Catholic Varsity Sports, as area teams desperately need a space for football and baseball practice during times of inclement weather. This is all I have for the topic of the proposed rec center. Thank you for your time, and thank you all for what you do every day.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other residents that would like to step up to the podium?
Thank you. Tim Schwanger, Sandusky resident, lifelong. You all have been tasked with this duty for, I think 8 weeks, 60 days. Has anybody taken the time to take a look at, in depth, our survey that we've done, that there was like 3,000 people that responded? That might be your first bit of homework, is to look over that survey. The idea would be to take a look at that survey and create a recreation center based on those opinions. The other item I'd like to bring up is the fact that we need to make sure that we don't duplicate services that we already have in the community. Depending upon who you speak with, one person will tell you that there's plenty of open gyms for, practices, pickup games, what have you. So we need to be careful we don't duplicate services. There's been talk of, in the new rec center, maybe a kitchen facility to teach kids how to cook. Again, I don't know if that's something that, the schools should probably be offering that through home ec or bachelor basics or whatever. So we need to make sure that we're doing exactly what the community wants. Number 3 would be, I don't see this as that much of an important issue for tourism. I think a rec center should basically be used by Sandusky residents and the outlying community. Let's forget about the tourism aspect of this new facility. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Swanger. Any others? All right. Well, since we don't have anyone else stepping up, we will go ahead and get into our new business at this time. And first up, the discussion surrounding the membership-funded and/or free to residents topic regarding the recreation center. And with that being said, I will open the floor to the rest of the advisory board to begin sharing some of their thoughts surrounding that. I will add that the packet that we did receive today, I apologize we weren't able to get that out to you all sooner, but that does offer you some insight regarding the potential revenue projections and some of the and the breakdown on the last page of that packet. So
I have a question.
Yes.
So to Tim Schwanger's point, when these rates were written to propose, was the survey feedback considered, and did the survey include? So to answer Tim's question, no, I have not studied the survey results, and that was an excellent recommendation that was made, and I will do that. But until I do, is anybody able to answer the question, were these rates that are proposed here, are they based on the survey results?
I can answer somewhat of that. I believe that the survey did have, would you be willing to pay a membership to use the facility? That was part of the survey. And
Did it ask amounts? Or?
I don't think it had amounts in there.
Okay.
I think the amounts were more based on kind of what
Okay.
other areas have. And I
Okay.
believe the amounts are also based on whether you're a city resident or non-city resident.
Right, okay, thank you.
I have a question. Would there be like an economic hardship application for those who can't afford, services at the rec? Would we consider that?
I think you'd have to. I mean,
Certainly, that's, Jerome, you bring up a great point. I certainly think that's something that has to be strongly considered. And if I don't even think I'm going out on a limb by saying this, but I think it's only fair when we think about providing access to all the residents. So.
And to be fair, when this was being explained to the community, the message was there would be a scholarship for those who could not afford. Now, I do not recall anyone conveying the age of those who would be eligible for scholarships, so I don't know what that means, but maybe that's something that this advisory committee ought to consider and make a recommendation.
I think also that our foundations in Erie County have been wonderful, helping with all kinds of scholarship funding over the years, and we could reach out to them.
Yeah, especially, I remember speaking with Tandra, and it's unfortunate that the state, I believe, is, for whatever reason, Tandra may be able to speak to this more in depth, but I think they've gone away from or dissolved the ACE program, which was actually a pretty important program providing each student or each child with $1,000 annually. So I know that certainly would have been a great resource to tap into, but unfortunately, we no longer have that opportunity. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Tandra?
Mr. Chair, thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge Yashika Brown and Pat Ruffin that have supported the vision of this community center since its inception, and I appreciate you being here at this meeting, and would love to have you voice whenever you feel free. I appreciate you, and I see you. And as far as the ACE program, it is, at this point, has been suspended. I don't know if it'll come back, but it was something that we were looking forward to as far as the Community Rec Center and what we envision as being able to provide services for families that may or may not be able to afford the programming. So if you would allow me, I have, to Tim Schwanger's point, I have looked at this report several times. I've highlighted several pieces, and I would like to have some grace. I have four talking points, and I just want to share this. And I spoke to Jason before we left the building today, and I encourage anybody that wants to see what it looks like to have kids running up into a building, happy to be there, and to experience the things that they experience at middle school. Stop over. You got to the 23rd because that's the end of the out-of-school program. But it's pretty amazing to see. My first point, can I be allowed for this?
Yes, please.
Okay. My first point is that I'm kind of disappointed that right out the gate, we're talking about membership fees that, to me, is a false choice because you're excluding a whole community and a whole population with membership fees, to me. This is my point. The rec center is either providing a community service or it is a profit-centered facility. We need to know which one it is. Community members, property owners, renters are already supporting the community rec center when they pay property taxes. The city, to my understanding, and I know this to be true, has agreed to provide recreational activities and services, and I'm not aware of anyone ever having to pay to participate, pay for a membership to participate with anything with the rec center. I'm not aware of that. This is my third point. We must live within our means and offer ways to fill in those budget gaps that on the reports, option 3, I believe, says that there's going to be like almost 400, I have it here, whatever that gap is for option 3. How we can fill that gap with partnerships that we have up here at this prestigious sitting right here, Savista, Firelands, BG. We have fundraising, annual fundraising events we could do. You know, there's a lot of ways for this gap that was, I don't know how this gap came to be, but I would like to investigate that as well. Like, how did that get determined, that there would be right out the gate that we're going to be in a deficit? Number 4 is the current rec budget does not get deducted from the new money that we get. Like, so that means to me that what our current rec budget is, when we move from middle school over to the new facility, it doesn't get subtracted from the $700,000. That includes our salaries. You know, it doesn't get taken away from that. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding that correctly, that our current budget is our current budget. It doesn't get subtracted from the new money, because it was a question that was proposed to me. Those are my points, and again, I'm open, and I just wanted to make sure that I just don't believe that, whether it's a sliding scale, it's just I'm open to.
Tandra, I have a question. So,
Yes.
Are you asking, does the current budget that funds Sandusky Recreation, or are you telling us?
I'm telling you that
You're
the
telling you
current
that the current budget
does
that's
not
currently
come out of that new money.
Okay, that will remain
Yes.
going forward.
So this new money is in addition to.
Okay, that's what I wanted clarification on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
I'll ask at this
Also-
time if, I'm sorry.
If I may.
Yes.
You said, if you could just clarify this for us, because this will impact how we start to think about not just the fees and membership, but programming, that Mills would be moving to the new facility? Is that, I had not heard that, so.
So just to better answer or add some clarification to Ms. Tandra's questions or concerns, I'd like to defer to our city manager, Mr. Orzek. If you could
Yes,
shed
so-
some light on that, please.
Yeah, I'll shed light on it. The $670,000 to operate and maintain the facility forever, so the number's not going to go up. I think that was mentioned last week. The recreation budget, I think, is like $250,000 or some number close to that. But that also includes 2 employees that are currently not in that budget that are being paid out of ARPA funds that have been added to the recreation fund. So after 2024 is over with, those 2 salaries, which are in excess of $150,000 with benefits, isn't included in the recreation budget currently, and is going to have to be accounted for moving forward. In addition, the recreation center is, depending on what hours we choose and how long those operations are going to have to be staffed by a considerable amount of people. Mr. Rambler can certainly attest, and Mr. Meredith, the extent of how much salaries and wages and retirements and all of that gets added into an employee. Health insurance alone, we're paying close to $28,000, I think. So all of those factors have to get factored into this equation $670,000 sounds like a lot of money to a lot of people, but when you start adding all those up, and it's not a lot. So the number that came back during the course of the study was done by Brandstetter, who does these type of studies for rec centers and facilities throughout the state and actually throughout the country. And, we have documentation of other municipalities that have tried to put rec centers together, and it costs a lot of money. So the fees are going to, we haven't even addressed the fees yet and what that number is going to be at the end of the day. Right when we did the levy, we were concerned about passing the levy to construct the facility, and any of the numbers that you might have in front of you are proposed and thought out, and they were evaluated through other rec centers that have been in existence for a while, like Bellevue, Fremont, Norwalk, et cetera. And so, no, the budget that's currently in place isn't going to be impacted with the programs that are being offered by the rec department, but certainly we're going to be adding on additional staff and electric and gas and, all the utilities that are included. So the presentation that, we don't want to end up like a YMCA and Surf's Up and all these facilities that have gone by the wayside. So we have to plan accordingly. I'm not going to be here in 20 years when you guys are going to need money to continue to operate this, but we have to be fiscally responsible, and we can't just offer the facility free to everyone. You can make that recommendation, but we're going to be out of money fast. So that's my.
Mr. Chair, so Lee, this is to your question. So you just asked me, was Mills School programming moving to the new facility? Did you not?
No, I thought that's what you said. I was just wanting to confirm if that was the case. I didn't know if that was still going to exist at Mills, and there was a new rec center. So I thought that's what I heard. And just wanted to clarify.
Well, I hope that's not a conversation going around. That would be very disappointing to think that we would not go with the new facility.
No, and I think, thank you, Mr. Orzech, for that clarification. And Tandra, I will say, whether we open up, with that conversation and or the subsequent conversations around amenities and what the rec center will consist of, I think we all can agree that there's just a great deal of intersectionality between those discussions, because I almost feel like you can't have one discussion without having the other, which is really what brings us here today and for the next several weeks. That said, I would like to really just check the pulse of this or get the thoughts from this advisory committee, just to see what sort of your knee-jerk reaction is to to having it be a membership funded and or free to the residents. And again, just I think we've heard
my point.
yes, we heard Ms. Tandra Frisbee's thoughts on that. And again, I'd like for if you all would be willing just to begin to shed some light on your personal thoughts on that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think maybe, so me personally, I would not be opposed to paying a fee. However, I don't think I represent the majority. So I think it's clear based on what Mr. Orzech said, is that additional revenue is going to be needed beyond what we're taking in. If that is accurate, and I have no reason to believe that it's not, it would be prudent to survey the residents of Sandusky to find out if if they had to pay to use the rec center, would you pay? Because that's going to give you an estimated dollar amount of how many people would use your rec center and how much revenue can you count on if you're expecting people to pay something to use the rec center, rather than just make your best guess.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, for me, I was thinking, there's a wealth of knowledge up here, and, the question was posed to me, would you think it was competition? For me, I'm a citizen first. I'm a citizen of Sandusky first. And so I think it's going to be a collaborative effort on everyone's part. How do we bring our resources together? How do we make this thing work for our kids? How do we fill this gap? Not just for our kids, but for our community. I think it's going to just be a collaborative effort, and how can we bring resources together as a team to make this happen and to make it work. Ideally, I would love for it to be no cost, for our families. So how do we figure that out? How do we collaborate as a group? I'm not here for Boys and Girls Club. I'm here for Jerome Johnson, a city resident. And so I think if we take those hats off of, I represent this entity, you represent this entity, it's important. But I think when we're speaking on behalf of the community, I think the community needs to be, heard. And like they said, the surveys, let's look at the surveys, let's look at the data. And see what we can do together to partner, because they've spoken, it's our rec center, it's our rec center. And so we want to make sure that it's equitable and that, all of our residents have access to this rec center. And so how do we do that? How do we partner? How do we bring some resources together to provide some great programming and things for our community?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Mr. Chair? I would just say that I don't know how you can have the facility operating and be sustainable without some sort of membership base in there. But with that, ever since I've been with Sandusky Rec, we've had a youth scholarship program that, for folks that may need assistance with the program fees that we have with some of our programs. And yeah, you'd have to have something in place. But the sustainability, like Eric, who came up and spoke, you don't want to have and how John had said about the why, having a facility of this magnitude and being able to keep it maintained and have money set aside for any capital things that you would need for that is a really important thing to have. So when we're 20 years down the road, we have the funds available to keep it as, one of the great facilities that we have here.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Whirling. Any others?
Mr. Chair, I may add, it could be a combination of both. There's a lot of entities up here and outside that would want to offer free programming, and then if people just want to use the rec center for basketball or the weight room or fitness, then we could have a pay scale to get some of those costs, but then also offer programs. If we want this to be the hub of city recreation, that could be a combination of many things. It doesn't have to be either you pay or you don't. It could be for the amenities, for all the things that require costs to maintain. More than likely, we're going to have to pay something because, like you said, it won't be here in 20 years if it's offered for free. But there are many programs, there are many grants that do health education, that do fitness programming, that either would want to volunteer or works for their grant or whatnot to offer that for free service. And if we want it to be a recreation center for the community, that I think is important.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Any others that would like to share their thoughts?
Mr. Chair, I would just, along with what Mr. Whirling said, I think a combination and a few others is reasonable. You worry about the long-term cost. That's eventually really what hurt the Y many years ago. I worry about with things like this, funding for capital improvements down the road. Someday you're going to need a new roof, et cetera. But I think, recognizing that it'll take a lot of collaboration and a combination of memberships, fees, scholarships. I think we can agree that we can come up with some type of reasonable plan there.
Very good. Thank you. Any others?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would add, sorry, I had to remove some fuzz from my microphone. I would add that I think it's an interesting concept when you look at the opportunity of what different things are within the center and then how those could be utilized. I do think that, I put this in the concept of the aquatic center that we're building at the high school, and clearly our kids will be able to take part in the sports venue as an aquatic center if they're going to be on the swim team or they're going to be on the Swan Club, and that's free. Is there a cost? Of course, because there's the suits you have to wear and all the other stuff that, you have to do to be part of that, but it's not like you're paying to be part of it. But then there's also going to be community access within the aquatic center, which is going to be some sort of partnership and collaboration that we're going to do that. But those will have some cost to them, because much the same way the aquatic center is very costly to manage, run, maintain. So I think when I put it in that concept of looking at the rec center, maybe it's that combination of opportunity where there are some programs that are fee-based, but then some that are not. But I think long-term, if we're looking at the 670,000, and John, I was doing some math, Mr. Orzak was doing some math, and if it was 250 minus 150, it might be around 100,000 then, if I was looking at that budget correctly. So then you're looking at 770 for the budget for staffing, operations, and such. Inevitably, you're going to have some sort of structure to have funding coming in to the facility too, to be able to maintain it if you want it to be a high level, which is some of the conversation we've had tonight too. Like we don't want this just to be a room or a place, but to make it high level, impactful for the community. I think that there's going to have to be something that's raising some funding to come into the center.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rambler.
Mr. Chairman, let's get one thing to add is,
Yes.
I know we talked about a survey possibly to find out what people would pay. I mean, we got 5 facilities listed on here, so we got a basis for what other places are charging. And there's a reason they're charging, just because they have long-term vision. They want the center to be here for as long as they're going to be here. So, I think maybe if we drill down into these numbers a little bit more, like I'm sure they've got some programs and scholarships and things that roll into their budget. It's all baked in here. I'm sure that's probably a good place for us to start, as opposed to maybe sending a survey out and waiting for those results to come in. And we've got templates here of things that we could base our rates on. That's just kind of where I would start.
Great, thank you. And just a few comments. I'll start with Mr. Finneran's comments. I know based off of some of those, some of the feedback or results that we've gotten from surrounding areas, I trust that this board will be mindful of the fact that we are certainly we are made up of probably the greatest melting pot in however many X square miles, probably until you get to Lorraine. And with that being said, there's certainly that comes with its own unique set of challenges. So we will certainly continue to take that into consideration as we begin to identify some sorts of fee structure, if you would. A lot of what I heard, and I appreciate all of your comments and certainly value them all. But I think Mr. Dyer really just makes a great point and sort of what he was referring to, almost like a hybrid model, right? And with that, I think that is why, programming just becomes such a important topic. Because it's not just we can't necessarily, in my opinion, have this idea that, well, if you build it, they'll come, because they might not, right? So that being said, programming is certainly going to be very vital to this, to this rec center, as that will ultimately, we hope, begin to, in some ways, generate some interest, and with interest, some revenue, and also leaning on, as many individuals had suggested, leaning on our other resources, whether that be in the nonprofit sector and as well as additional fundraising opportunities. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is for the most part that this should be, membership funded, with the idea of, for certain programming, whether that be, some of that programming be free and or a small fee associated with it. It sounds as if, in large part, that we are going to consider this being a membership funded center. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, just for a point of clarification, so if the consensus is that there's a membership funding stream that's not at the expense of failing to serve those who cannot pay.
Correct.
Am I correct about that?
Yes.
Okay, so,
And-
so if there is a membership fee, we are not going to not consider the people who lack the ability to pay. They will still be included and accommodated for.
Of course, and
Okay.
and please, I'm open to any other recommendations, but just for the sake of, because we're not going to certainly have all the answers in an hour and a half in a single meeting, which is why this may take 8 weeks or more. But what I'm hoping to establish tonight is that we sort of just have a consensus that this will be membership funded, and then as we leave here, just begin to kind of think about what that might look like as we begin to dive, take a deeper dive into that packet, and then come back to this body with just further recommendations and have a further discussion about what that might look like. So,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
Actually, Mr. Jason, did you say that if somewhere in the report it spoke about when they did the survey, would they be willing to pay a membership? Because I don't see
Yeah,
that.
that's what I thought that that's
I don't see it anywhere, and I would just be curious. I mean, I'm just curious at if that was a question.
No, and I believe I misspoke when I said that, because I looked at the questions, back at the questions, and it said, how strongly would you support or vote for a property tax levy to help pay for the operations of the rec center?
Because I believe, I don't know, I just think that the community, especially who pay property taxes and renters and, they're, I don't know.
Yeah, and it was overwhelming support for the city of building the rec center too. It was 81% for that, yeah.
And again, like a hybrid, like you said, Elliot, we got to figure that part out. But again, rec center and community, when I think of community, it's a service. Like we are of service to our community. And again, I just go back to, what I do on a daily basis. And I look at the families that we see. Jerome, you see those some families, and it just, and I'm, again, open to how we figure it out. But to say and I'm looking at the faces of the parents and the grandparents that are raising these kids that come to my building, our building every day, if they have to pay, and I believe this discussion on here says, $350 to $375 annually. To us, to some, it might not seem like a lot. I know some heads will fall off their necks if I propose that to some of these families. And then, so what you're saying hybrid-wise is that those families would be offered this money to be included. Is that correct?
Well, I will say is
that what you were saying, Sue?
That was my question. So like for if we had families that could not afford, whatever the plan is for the funding the gap, it will not be at the expense of saying, sorry, family, you can't participate because you can't pony up.
Well, and is there a happy medium between, I guess, the direct amenities, if you would, that for lack of a better term, that the rec center offers versus specific programming, like that's what currently being offered at Mills, right? Maybe in some way, shape, or form, those kind of act is two separate entities. Again, I'm just spitballing, but again, maybe there's some opportunity there to, I guess, consider both sides of the coin.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's kind of where I was trying to go to, just to think through it more specifically. After-school programming and when kids are not in school is incredibly important. And having gone over to Mills a number of times, and by the way, I win at dodgeball all the time. Tandra would want to make sure that I pointed that out.
Yeah.
It is really valuable, but I think that it's looking at what are our opportunities, because I think if we're talking about teaching kids to read, interacting with each other, building relationships, conflict resolution, those are things that people really can get around, and they can also be very supportive funding. And then if we're looking at it that way in that non-school time, which is incredibly important time for our kids, how do we use that? But how could we utilize that, funding it differently to where it's then not part of the fee structure, I think is where Mr. Harris was going to, and I think you were going to. I think that's the unique opportunity. Like, how could we do that? But how could we do it kind of based to what Mr. Schwanger was saying earlier, through collaboration too? Because that's something the school would be interested in. We want you to have our kids when they're not in school. But I also know, the number that you have is only a certain number, but some of them are going to Boys and Girls Club, and some of there's a lot of different of those. But how could we build that collaboratively between all of those entities, but then somehow make it financially negligible impact for the families we're trying to serve, if that makes sense?
Mr. Chair, I agree with Tandra. I know she does. We do this work every day, and so for some, like she said, it may look like, oh, that's manageable, but for the families that we do serve, it is not, and that's just the reality of what we deal with every day. And so I think that's, to me, what you were just saying, and I think what everybody is saying, I think that's where the collaboration piece is going to be important with the work that we're doing with the rec center, and just really leaning on, the expertise of Tandra, different ones that do the work like every day. We can tell you, it's sad in some cases, so we just want to make sure that this rec center is going to be equitable for all of our families. And if not, how do we come to a consensus to make it equitable to where it's not a strain on our families, or, certain programs are not available because they can't afford to participate. We want them to have the fullness of the rec center, not just part of it. And so how do we make that happen? How do we collaborate? How do we bring our teams together at the table, our grant writers at the table to see what we can come up with, what we can find financially to support, what the community needs are. And so I think that's going to be important in our future conversations, is the collaboration piece and how we bring our teams together and try to find finances and funding to support what the community wants.
Mr. Harris, question.
Yes.
I'm looking through again, I see that we have Bellevue, Bowling Green, Fremont, Massillon, and Norwalk on the list of other outside recreation centers. I'm not sure if I'm missing, but did we ask any of those rec centers how they've addressed this issue that we're coming back and forth on? Because I think we're all on the same page. We understand there needs to be some type of membership fee, some programming, but at the same time, we don't want to let families down and not be participant. I'm looking at Fremont. It's right down the street from us, similar sized community. I bet they're probably bounce this idea off the wall. Maybe it behooves us to reach out to Fremont and just ask them how their membership structure set up. And do they offer scholarship funds, or are there grants out there through their local foundations to address that?
And not to put you on the spot, Mr. Whirling, but did you have some insight that you might be able to offer us?
Yeah, there's a varied degree of what different centers do. Some have even almost like a friends group of their recreation programs where donations come into that, and then they offer scholarships or memberships through that base. There was one, we have the Ohio Parks and Recreation Association, where I sat in on one of their sessions there, and they even put together an entire website that they had so their users could come in and do membership based that way. But there's a lot of different ways to do that, and we just would have to come up with that solution of how, whether it's the families or if it's something with all the youth that are coming in. I think a lot of the programs that we have, the parents are coming by, or the guardians are coming by, they're dropping off the kids for those programs, and answering the questions of membership for whether it's the youth or the families for those groups. But I could pull together some of those different options that are from the Ohio Parks and Recreation Association, if interested.
Yeah, I think that'd be
valuable.
To the conversation. For sure.
We're interested.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm understanding. So what I'm concluding after listening to everyone speak is we appear to be in agreement to pay a fee for those who can, but we also want a system that provides for those who cannot.
Yeah, that is equitable, yes,
Okay.
as Mr. Johnson
Okay.
stated, yes. And again, I think getting into the nuts and bolts of what that exactly entails, that's going to take a greater sense of discovery, to say the least, but.
And would that be a staff function?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, and, so, again, yeah, so we all are in agreement to establishing some sort of membership-funded structure, and again, one that is equitable, and then again, as looking forward to our future meetings, just having a greater discussion about that, especially once Mr. Whirling brings forth some additional resources, and we have the opportunity to do some of our own due diligence. So, all right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Are we done with that topic?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, Michelle Reeder, our finance director, is here, and she was prepared to talk about the budget for the construction of the rec center. If you want to have that information, I don't want to have her come in all the, meeting after meeting, and if you have or want that information tonight, she's prepared to do it, and that way she can enjoy the rest of her summer.
Yes. Ms. Reeder, if you wouldn't mind joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Orsak. So it was included in your packet today, guys. Everything that you see there as far as funding, I was just going to have it on the screen. And it was a one-page, simple document for everyone to see what we have going on. The top there on the green line, you'll see admissions and parking taxes we've referred to already. That is the $700,000 annually that was committed for 20 years. That was per the city ordinance 21-152. And that is at the time where we had the Sandusky, City of Sandusky and the Cedar Fair partnership. So we're very thankful for that, and that was a promise that we were supposed to help build the rec center. Since 2021, obviously, the interest rates have changed quite substantially, so that's one of the reasons we're looking at, what can we actually afford. If we simply took the $700,000 times 20 years, that gets you the figure of $14 million. So I know that figure has been kicked around, but the figure of $14 million, I need someone to give me $14 million today at 0% interest for the next 20 years so we can pay them back. We haven't found that person yet. So what we're looking at is $11 million is the figure we're looking at for a budget. So $11 million. In blue here, we have a couple different scenarios, whether we have to pay that back for 20 years or 25 years. That's a decision that administration and the commission will be making in the future. If we're looking at like a 4% interest rate, which we're not there yet, but by the time we bond this out and do some financing on this, hopefully we'll be near 4%, probably between 4 and 4.25 is what we're estimating right now. So that payment, is going to be over that mark of $700,000 that we were trying to hit, but internally we'll get that figured out. So $11 million is the figure. We do have money set aside already. The American Cran site, there's probably at least $1 million of site prep work that needs to be done. We have the funds set aside in capital to make that happen. So there's going to be $1 million of site prep work. That still leaves $11 million to do all the design, construction, and inspection that needs to be done on the building. The bottom line there in orange just mentions that, yes, we do have the rec center levy dollars, $670,000 annually is the estimate there. Those funds will be coming in, and that was meant to help offset and keep the cost low to operate the rec center and also the future maintenance items, as people have already spoke today, the roof, the HVAC, those long-term capital commitments that will need to be made. So that was the plan of action when we went for that levy, and that's what we're hoping to stick to.
Awesome.
But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for Ms. Reed?
Yes, I have a question. So in that $11 million, does that include the amenities, like as far as equipment and things like that, or no?
It does not. So we call that the FF&E, the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We will fund that outside of that because depending on what we need, we're going to have to figure out what exactly that number is. So, it can't be another $2 million of treadmills and, things like that, but we will get that figured out for what is needed to equip that rec center appropriately.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If I may, do you have an idea of where that money's going to come from to pay for all that stuff?
For the FF&E items?
Yes.
So we are currently setting aside, even though the rec center's not built, we're kind of taking that $700,000 annually that was committed from the Cedar Fair partnership deal, kind of setting that aside and using it for rec-related items. So those funds should be available when it's time to outfit that new rec center.
So those, may I ask?
Yes.
So those will not be included then in forward going?
Correct. We'll pay for those on a separate item.
Any other questions?
So the $700,000 started to be collected when?
That started to be collected in 2022.
And so the $700,000 collected in 2022, 2023, and 2024 is not part of the $11 million for building?
That is correct. So in 2022, that was the first year because this partnership came about because of the increase to admissions tax and the new parking tax. So the allocation was going to be $700,000. But in that first year in 2022, Cedar Fair, Cedar Point has already sold the majority of their season passes in 2021 at the old rate. So we didn't see any real additional dollars. That was just on the individual ticket sales that were actually sold in 2022. So the first year, there was about $350,000 that was allocated, but yes, 2023 and 2024, there are those funds available. We are currently paying for the middle school lease. Out of that, we've also paid for the golf course. We purchased a large parcel for the golf course, so we now own all the land that the golf course sits on. So we've done some things with that. The additional money is where we're going to pay for the $1 million of site prep for the rec center. That's where that $1 million is coming from.
May I ask
Yes.
another question? So if the 700,000 or less the first year that's been collected is going to be used for other things, will we only be collecting them for 18 more years or 17 more years for the building?
So we will continue to collect the admissions tax and parking tax. What was done by ordinance was just a memorandum of understanding, and this is where they intended those dollars to go. We will continue to collect the admissions tax and parking tax, and it will be up to the administration and commission to just keep pledging that. We will have 20 years of at least $700,000 to make the debt payments on the rec center.
Thank you.
Very good. Any others? All right. Well, thank you, Ms.
You're welcome.
Reeder. Appreciate that insight and that expertise. And yes, for the sake of time, I think that wraps us up perfect on that 6 o'clock hour. I appreciate you all for tonight's discussion. And we will continue on with our new business at our next meeting, which is next Tuesday. What's the date? Next Tuesday?
21st?
Next Tuesday, the 21st, at 5 p.m. Thank you all. And that said, this meeting is adjourned.
Make a motion.
Oh, yes, thank you. Second. There we go. Forgot that detail.